Hello guys, welcome back. Today we are going to be doing another episode of Block Wars. So the war is going to start. The first nation to make a move are the Sponge, who especially deploy their forces, or specifically deploy their forces against the Lapis across the water side. They launch an all-out attack with those forces. Uh-oh. Oops. Then they launch an attack. Or they launch an attack all over the coastline of the Lapis, trying to seize the water for themselves. The Lapis have to deploy every last one of their forces that aren't currently occupied with something to slow this offensive. And then, over on this side of the map, the Sponge are launching a slight assault. Might have called them, the moss earlier. No, they're the Sponge. But they are launching a decent-sized assault, and the Lapis are trying to hold their ground. And pretty quickly, the Moss launch an assault. And they slam through the Lapis forces, trying to sever their army in half. Or I guess their territory in half. The moss are very aggressively attacking the Lapis fortifications, but here is where they have the most progress made. And they are breaking through the line of defense. Trying to break through, though not really making any significant progress. The moss are desperately trying to surround the Lapis forces and break their lines. The encirclement is going very well, but meanwhile the Lapis forces over here decide that they will take forces that currently don't have a position to go to try and encircle the moss. And surprisingly, the moss are actually pushed back. Now, so far, this is the main blow that the Lapis are trying to deal to the moss, as everywhere else, the Lapis are being pushed back hard, and the oak leaves and the moss decide to do massive push. and currently are deploying all their soldiers to help with this assault. And so the Lapis are forced back incredibly, and are like just pushed back. They are desperately trying to hold the line, but are losing soldiers. The Moss lose a decent number of soldiers as well, but it is nothing like the casualties that they are inflicting upon the Lapis. So it does seem like the leaves are and the moss are just crushing the Lapis, and they definitely are. But now the moss are deploying more soldiers to the front line to try and break the Lapis resistance to their forces. And the attack is very successful. As the Lapis were not prepared at all to face such a massive number of soldiers. Now, the Moss do suffer casualties, and pretty high casualties for this battle, but are still not harmed enough to cause the Moss to give up the fight. So the Lapis are being pushed back, and they lose the battle for their coastline, and are in a very, very weak condition. And so they lose the battle. Now the sponge are trying to break through the wall, but they can't do anything against the might of the remaining Lapis soldiers on the wall. So they just decide to briefly kind of not do any massive pushes in that area, but they launch a second assault to try and destabilize the Lapis fortifications and army. But the Lapis general in that area is not happy at all and throws the sponge back, and he launches a counter attack. Not deciding to go for the tactical area, but instead going for the sponge base. And now the encirclement of the Moss forces has been completed, and the Moss suffer devastating casualties. Only 2 of their soldiers managed to escape, but the 2 soldiers launched the attack on the remaining Lapis territory in this area. So the Lapis managed to regain that small amount of territory, but they are still losing a ton more in other regions. And the Holy Netherack have now decided to deploy all of their reserve troops and are going to unleash a massive attack to destroy the Lapis forces and try and regain their former empire and glory. And they pretty quickly break through this assault destroys the Lapis fighters, soldiers, and army in the region, and the Holy Netherack Church and Empire deploys its forces to utterly crush the Lapis in combat, and their leader is overjoyed at the thought of winning this battle and securing all the territory. So basically, immediately after the counterattack that the Lapis had launched, the territory is immediately lost again. And the Lapis forces pretty quickly are beaten, but now instead a greater foe kind of joins the battle. And they are the Moss. Sure, they were kind of already in the battle, but earlier they were fighting against the Lapis, and now they are fighting against the Lapis and the Holy Netherack. Now, another thing to note is that the palace is being seized or under siege, or under attack by the Moss forces as they have reached it, and so that will be a very interesting fight. The remaining Lapis soldiers, who are desperately trying to defend this tiny amount of territory, and the last bits of their nation in that region. And right now, it seems that the Lapis are completely and utterly losing this war. Which is very true. The Lapis have lost most of their power in that area, and now are desperately deploying every last person they can, which none of these people have military training, so it honestly doesn't really matter. But they're still going to try and stop their enemies. And the assault against the sponge goes quite well. And the Moss decide that they are going to turn upon the sponge, as the sponge have lost against the Lapis and they don't want the Lapis attacking them from the north. And so the Moss seize the area. And then fight off the Lapis soldiers and take the all the territory that the sponge had, and also decide that they will give all of this territory, or this new territory, to the leaves, or to the oak leaves. Not the sponge territory in the north. I'm talking about in the south. And from the start, we could kind of tell that it would be a complete and utter victory for the moss and the leaves, all the leaves, as the Lapis didn't exactly have that powerful of a coalition. They actually didn't really even have a coalition. So with that being said, the victory is amazing for the moss. Not a perfect victory, though, as they do lose a ton of soldiers in the war, of course. But it's still a decent victory. And the border will be drawn out via a large wall. And it is almost a completely straight wall, as uh it is like just necessary for the wall to be super straight. This will probably be one of my longest Block Wars uh episodes. But yeah, I'll probably finish with this after the episode or after the video because this is gonna take quite a while. So I hope you guys liked the video, and I'll see you guys next time. And bye.